muscles in his arms. And this is the metaphor by which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us of things unseen and what really rules the world. A man cannot flap his arms and fly like a bird. But if a group of men who call themselves engineers put their heads together and talk to each other, and a group of people called investors put some money together, and a group of people called safety experts, and a group of people with land, and all these people cooperate with thinking and understanding, they can build a thing called a plane. And a man who cannot flap his arms to fly can sit in that plane and move faster than the speed of sound. What his physical body cannot do, what is in his mind and what is in his heart, can open the sky to him by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A 5-year-old boy, if left alone with his physical body, has no chance against a lion in a jungle. But if a group of people who understand how to bend metal, and a group of people who understand chemistry, how to take a little powder and put it into a thing called a bullet, and another group of people can together make a gun, you can take the biggest lion in the world, you can take a 5-year-old child, the 5-year-old child can point at the lion, and through the mind and the heart of many people, a 5-year-old, maybe weighing 50 pounds, can take out a 500-pound lion. You see, this is the power of things unseen, the power of our collective humanity. Mankind is made weak physically, and yet we have taken over the entire world from every animal that is 50 times stronger. Why? Because we are more animalistic than the animals that we have conquered? No. Because we love each other, because we think together, because we speak to each other, because we have the gift from God of understanding. And so it is the gift of understanding that elevates man beyond all other creatures in the world. And yet we live in times when people who are our so-called leaders would like to suggest to us that our path forward in life is to become more like animals and less like men. And this is why we are where we are. Because we are denying the gift that God gave us, which is understanding. And the more we understand about the world, we think we develop understanding in universities when I've been to some of the finest. I've gotten all the advanced degrees, and done very, very well in the academic system. So this is not a rant by somebody who was shut out of a school against education. I'm simply suggesting that the education most of us receive is utterly simplistic. We study physics, or economics, or medicine. We study things that attempt to reduce us to, as somebody put it in biology, $12 worth of chemicals to create the human body. Or in economics, a series of rational people, rational meaning that we act only in our own self-interest, always looking to maximize profit. Or the series of psychology, we're nothing more than animals with more sophisticated brains than the animals that came before us. And all of these attempts to try to describe the behavior of the universe and how it really works have failed. People who decided to use psychology as motivation for the development of man came up with theories similar to communism, which have utterly failed. People who decided that men were intrinsically selfish, profit-seeking little vultures created forms of free market capitalism, which are now failing right before us. All explanations of human behavior that attempt to remove the currency of love and understanding from an explanation of who we are, what we do, and why we're even alive have failed. The only thing which has stood, the only ideas which have stood, are the ideas which say that man is more than his physical body, and that teach us how to go beyond our physical body. And that is the idea, the real idea of Islam. The real idea of Islam is the idea that you might visit somebody in China, which physically might take you 1,000,000 years to walk to, if you could ever get there by foot, a few oceans in the way. But you might physically meet somebody in China. You might be kind to that person. You might be generous to that person. You might look out for that person's needs and leave such an impression on them that when you come back to Canada, thousands and thousands of miles away, 50 to 60 years later, this Chinese person still carries a bit of you in him. We are 1,400 years removed from a man in the Arabian desert who talked to us about how the world should function. We can't physically see him. Most of us can't speak his language. If we could speak his language, we certainly can't speak the version of it that he spoke. We never shook hands with him. We never broke bread with him. He isn't, for most of us, from our tribe. And yet, huge aspects of our life are motivated by this person as though he was standing right beside us. And his words have more force over us than somebody else who might hold a gun to our head. We get up when it's uncomfortable before dawn to pray in the way that he said to pray. We give up food and water for 30 consecutive days to fast in the way that he fasted. We give money to people we don't know in charity and zakat. And for many of us, we pick the jobs, the careers, the places we live because of a desire to please God in the way that he suggested. Do you think this man was confined by the physical limit of his body? Do you think he spread his way by hammering people over the head with a sword? He's not here. The sword is gone. You can't hear him. And yet he is inside you and inside me 1,400 years later. This is the power of a thing unseen. And this is the currency of love. This is available to any human being. It is possible for any human being to move 10,000 pounds. A 5-year-old child can move 10,000 pounds of equipment. You know how? He says, "Oh, Daddy, help me. Oh, Uncle, help me. Oh, brother, help me." And who will say no to the 5-year-old child? Who will say no to a baby, can't even speak yet, crying for food in the middle of a park? 50 people will come and run to him. Does the baby have the strength to beat people? Does he have the words to persuade people? No. The currency of love is what keeps us alive. The reason you and I are not shot dead when we walk down the street is because people believe in some sense of right, in some sense of good, in some sense of order. The reason the bank still has our money is because we believe it still has our money. Or every day we would line up and rob them. The reason I can buy something from someone across the street is because he believes that that money will still have value the next day. That I could take a check, that I could enter into a contract, that I'm going to be paid 2 weeks from now. Everything in our life that has any meaning, when you think about it, doesn't come from our animal characteristics. The bank doesn't give us money because we're bigger than the old lady beside us. Everything in our life that has any meaning comes from what's in our head and what's in our heart. And the sooner we understand that, we can start to use what is in our head and what is in our heart, because all of us have heads and all of us have hearts. And this is what has been missing from the dialogue in the Western world, the dialogue in the Muslim world, the dialogue in Europe, and the dialogue everywhere else. People live by the examples that are presented to them, by the examples that are celebrated. When the currency of how to get what you want is to kill people who disagree with you, then this becomes the role model for everybody to follow. And it doesn't work. The biggest superpower in the world, along with many, many other nations, went into Afghanistan originally to chase a bunch of people that had harmed some people in America, was what we were told. But long after most of those people were dead or killed, they stayed. And then it became about getting them to accept our way of life, whatever that means. It keeps changing every 5 minutes. To some people it was about a pipeline. To other people it was about $1 trillion worth of mineral wealth underneath the ground. We'll never know exactly for sure. But you had the largest superpower in the world trying to get a bunch of people who don't have running water to do what they said. And guess what? It didn't work. By every law of physics, by every law of economics, by every law of psychology, by every law of everything that we study in universities, this should not have happened. People who sit around praying for a miracle should look at what happened in Afghanistan. And it didn't just happen with the Americans. It happened with the Russians. Before that, it happened with the Brits. 141 times, Rudyard Kipling said, they invaded, and they were repelled. The lesson of this, without getting incredibly political about it, the lesson of this is that no group of people can force another group of people to adopt their way of life. It's never worked. And if it hasn't worked for the Americans in Afghanistan, why is it going to work for Mohammed Marah with a machine gun and a bunch of Jewish school children? Where's the mathematics in that? Once upon a time in Arabia, there were many Jewish people. And contrary to what you read in history, the reason why, in Western history, the reason why there aren't so many now is a lot of them converted to Islam. There were more Jews in Arabia when Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came than there were Muslims, for obvious reasons. There was one Muslim, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And slowly but surely more and more of the Arab tribes converted to Islam. You think it was possible for Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to hold a sword and threaten every single member of the Quraysh? Is that how Abu Bakr converted? Is that how Khadija converted? Is that how Umar bin Khattab converted? Uthman bin Affan? Abdurrahman bin Auf? Salman Farsi? Islam spread through the currency of love. Islam spread through a noble example of somebody who said that the world could be so much better than what it is today if we understand how it was really built. And that most of the things that men use to divide each other, most of those things have no basis in the real reality of how we work. So when Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam listens to Salman the Persian and takes advice from him, this sort of fake boundary that I'm an Arab and you are an Iranian was attacked and smashed. When Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam allows Bilal, a black man, to call all these so-called fair-skinned people to prayer, he says this color of skin thing, this is nonsense. When he directed people to move to Abyssinia, to live among the Negus, there was also black population. He said, your tribe, your skin color, these things, they do not define who you are. You're defined in who you are by what's in your heart and what's in your head. And this man in Abyssinia has a better heart and a better head than our so-called fellow Arabs do. They made no distinction. Then when they went to Medina, and he said, each of you is a brother to the other, even though one were from the Quraysh and the other was from the two warring tribes in Medina. You are brother to each other. People took this so seriously, they even asked, well, what about marriage? Because if he's my brother, I don't think he can marry my sister anymore. That's how seriously they took these things. So we created a way of life that said that all of the things that had made men weak, all of the things that have made men more like animals than themselves. I mean, animals gather based on skin color. Animals gather based on, strength. Animals gather based on the sounds that some of them make, which are intelligent to some and versus the other. And Islam came to smash all of that. Islam came to say that there are things that you don't see, as opposed to the color of your skin or the tribe you're from or your physical size. And these things that you don't see are so much more important than the things that you do. And the things that you don't see are the things that will make you great, that will give you the capacity to expand your life beyond your physical body, to expand your life beyond the barrier of time, to expand your life beyond the barrier of space. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam lives in this masjid. Yes, he's physically dead, but his spirit is in this masjid. He never came here. He never saw it. He never built it. And yet everything good and decent in his life, we study, we attempt to repeat, and we attempt to keep him alive, here, now. How is this possible? By the laws of physics, by the laws of psychology, by the laws of economics, or by the laws of every other inadequate science we have developed